Interesting trivia about the Lord's Cricket Stadium. It is the only cricket ground in the world, by the way, where you can bring alcohol from outside.
Thus, basically proving the adage that Lords really has the spirit of cricket.
TV umpire to director, we have a player review. Can we rock and roll, please?
Hello and welcome to our spirited gang at the Bits and Pieces Cricket Podcast, upholding the spirit of cricket for the past 37 weeks and counting. This is episode 38, and you are joining us, as always, in very high spirits. Firstly, we have Rachna Ramchand, whose presence thankfully helps this podcast pass the Bechdel test, at least this episode. Rachna's passionate support for the women's game is peerless, and it's great to have her returning to the pod to celebrate India's historic 3-0 sweep of England and Jhulan Goswami's glorious career. Say hello, Rachna.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back. It's 8 a.m. here, so I'm still waking up and still processing whatever happened yesterday.
We can't wait to get to it. But before that, we also have today our own culinary Casanova, the patron saint of Bangalore's very own Karaban Congress and self-professed powder masala dosa fanatic. This man graduated from VIT and currently works in product marketing at Wisdom, but we love him for his WIT and wisdom. Welcome back to the pod, Sameer Mohan. How are you doing?
Thanks, Nitin. That's a very fancy intro. Brand plug and all that. But yeah, I did have a Mangalore bun today to start my day. Fantastic victory and all of that. That called for celebration. So yeah, bonus points. I've posted the place where I have picked it on my Twitter also. Self-plug.
Oh, okay. Easter eggs on the podcast. You can follow Sameer at Sleepyhead148 on Twitter to find out where to get the best Mangalore buns. Meanwhile, our next panelist is the brains behind the operation. The lineups of this lineup. This lineup is made up of lions waiting to be unleashed, and it is completed by the Watson, who keeps the lions leashed. I mean, the shares locked. While the rest of us are stat padding, this guy is doing all the think padding. Okay, Linux, Watson, ThinkPad. I've run out of IBM references, so here we welcome Karthik, the cartographer who works in artificial intelligence at IBM. Say hi, Karthik.
Hi, and say hi to my glass of beer. I've been drinking all day since the events of, well, I guess it's yesterday for you guys, but I've been trying to hold on to Saturday for as long as I can because of what we're about to talk about. But hi, everyone.
Today's episode is going to be quite saucy because we will be talking about SOC. At this point, dear listener, you may be wondering, what on earth is SOC? To explain this, I need to go back in time. Quite some time, in fact. The Ramayana is a Sanskrit epic from ancient India. It is one of two important legends in Hinduism. The chief protagonist of the Ramayana was Ram. Oh wait, that's the wrong Ram. I have gone into the wrong page of Wikipedia. Let's try again. Where were we? Oh yes. What is the SOC? We'll get there in a moment. Random access memory, or RAM, is a form of computer memory which can be read and changed in any order. Why am I talking about the RAM? Well, yes, to get to SOC. SOC, also known as System on Chip, is an integrated circuit that holds the entire computer software together. And like the SOC powers the computer, conversations about another SOC, the spirit of cricket, powers all conversations around our beautiful game. And unlike the Ramayana, this scripture is unwritten. It is entirely imagined and passed on down through the generations. You thought women's cricket wasn't getting any attention? Well, think again. Rachna was at the ground yesterday, soaking in the wonderful atmosphere as India and England battled it out in the third ODI. All it took was one act by Deepti Sharma, perfectly within the rules of the game. England's last wicket had brought them back into the game when Deepti ran out Charlotte Bean, backing up too far at the non-striker's end to give India a close win. It was a historic moment, an unprecedented clean sweep for India, a wonderful send-off for Jhulan Goswami, one of the superstars of the game. All of that didn't matter once the SOC brigade started chattering. Over to you, Rachna. Talk us through what you saw and experienced at Lord's yesterday.
Yeah, went to Lord's thinking it's Jhulan Goswami's last match. Though I should mention, I assumed that Jhulan Goswami had actually retired until a few weeks ago. I think the entire world had assumed that after the World Cup. And so when it was announced that she's actually going to be playing for the last match, she's going to be playing this ODI series, it was a pleasant surprise. And of course, this is the first women's game, women's ODI to be played in 5 years at Lord's, which is quite historic. And the last time was the 2017 finals, which which again was played between England and India, and that was a very painful final, as we all know. Anyway, go to Lords, and first innings happens. Lords is, from I've been to Lords, I think 3 times now. It's not been a high scoring pitch. Anyway, 169, we were like, okay, England is going to clean sweep this, and then what a second innings. And of course, we had Renuka with her 4 wickets. We had Jhulan, who has been consistent as always. But then also full credit goes to the England team as well, which, especially the tail enders, really, they put in their heart into the batting. Charlie Dean coming in at 7 down, I think, pulling her way through till the very end. All of us were like, okay, 7 wickets down, we have a chance. 8 wickets down, we still have a chance. 9 wickets down, do we really have a chance? And
with these games, you always know it is going to go down to the wire. Whatever happens, there is going to be one partnership because the target is so small, right? Yeah.
And Indian cricket will be the winner.
That's the spirit.
So tell us, Rachna, you've not yet got to the headlining act of the day, though you've given us a great description of what must have been a wonderful day of cricket. But yeah, tell us what happened after this.
Then, both Freya and Charlie put on 20-30 runs partnership. It just seemed to be never ending. And all of us just sitting, it was so interesting because I had these England fans next to me, in front of me, a bunch of Indian fans around me. And we're like, 1 more wicket. And they're like, please don't lose the wicket. And Deepti Sharma comes in and comes down the field to bowl the ball. And before you know it, she's turned, knocked off the bails, and she looks at the umpire, asks, appeals. Umpire's very confused. Everyone is confused. India's confused. It goes to the TV umpire and it's out. And people around us, were angry. I would say we were cheering. We were first confused and then we're like, yay, we won. But then seeing the anger by the England crowd, most of us shut up. And people started walking out. People were booing. I don't know how much of this actually, you could see while.
Let me ask you something, Rachna. What do English crowds do when they're angry at the cricket? Like, we know they express joy by clapping their hands. When they're angry, do they turn around in a huff or something? Like, what is the expression?
I mean, I'm still thinking about this one incident that happened, which I actually tweeted about. So obviously we were like, what just happened? Oh, wow. Oh, yay, we won. And we all start clapping and cheering. Yay, India. And then these women in front of me, they turn and they look at us and they're like, Indians, always cheating.
It's like something out of 1983, the movie.
Exactly.
Literally, right? Yeah.
And we were like, what? And then she's targeting the crowd and looking at us and then just walks off, she and her friend. And then there's this angry English man in front of us who's just yelling at all of us as if it's our fault. It was such an interesting dynamic because most of us just shut up. We just didn't want to respond back, even though we were a majority in the stand.
Right.
There were some people who started like, what about the 2019 World Cup winning?
Of course.
What about 1984? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Angry Englishman yelling just reminds me of, old man yelling, get off my lawn, to which you guys should have responded, get out of my country. Like, if you had left my country, I wouldn't be here today,
Actually, what do angry Englishmen do? They yell at the clouds. It's anyway a country where it's always cloudy and raining.
Oh. Except for yesterday.
Yes.
This was the other interesting thing. Like, everybody's looking at the Duckworth-Lewis score as well. So when England were at like 80 for 7 or whatever, the Duckworth-Lewis score was like 134, and people are like, should we be like praying for it to rain at this point and then we win? And that would have been a more legitimate win based on, the responses by the English crowds yesterday that have happened.
In London, I think it always helps to keep the Duckworth-Lewis sheet handy. You never know when it's going to start raining anyway, right? Even when it's glorious weather out there. I can just imagine, right? Like, we obviously got a lot of the booing, noise on television as well. So Nasir Hussain was on air, and you had Lydia Greenway who was on air as well. Nick Knight later was the analyst, Dominic Cox. All of them were quite unanimous in saying that, this was not the right way, or it was not in the right spirit of the game, which was firstly shocking because the ICC and NCC have made it very clear that this run out is very legal now. They've even moved it out of unfair play into the run out section of the law book itself. And I must clarify, it was not an unfair play section earlier because of what the bowler was doing, but because of what the batsman was doing, which was taking an unfair advantage by backing up too early. But considering your experience there, Rachna, firstly to start with, it's a women's game, right? I would imagine there is this unspoken sort of camaraderie amongst people who come to watch and support women's cricket, right? Which I am sure it's not divided by, which team you're supporting. I'm sure India fans and England fans were out there in full force. Women's cricket fans were out there in full force supporting the game yesterday. And it's always great to see that. But this moment, I'm guessing, completely changed all of that, right? Suddenly you had, like you yourself mentioned, right? You had women fans out there who turned back and said something extremely racist and extremely silly, I would say, without even going into the fact that it didn't make sense because what happened on the field was well within the laws. Yeah, it must have been quite an experience to go through that.
Yeah, it actually made me question at that point, am I a women's cricket fan? Am I an India fan? Am I supporting my country? And I think, that is in a way the progression of a sport if you think about it. I mean, before this, or at least I would say until maybe at least a year ago, I was just watching women's cricket because it's women's cricket. And, India's performance, as we all know, has been quite mixed over the years. I think we've probably lost more than we have won, especially against the top tier teams. And so you're really watching it for the love of the sport. And I know a lot of people out there watch the sport as well. That's the reason why I've been supporting the 100. For me, it was always about just watching women's cricket. But now suddenly there has been this transition where, I've become an ardent India supporter and nothing can stop that. And I'm biased with the way I feel about, Deepti's awareness and all of that. And I may come up with other arguments if I was on the other side. But there is that transition happening. And you can see it in the way the crowds are reacting. You can see it in the way the entire Twitter world's talking about it. And, I'm going through my tweets, I'm going through Twitter, and I'm hardly seeing any women actually talking about Deepti's run out yesterday. It's amazing to see how men are just talking about it. And I really wonder how much of the match did they actually see? Did they just, see the highlights and then they switched on? They were like, oh, this is an issue. Whatever, I want to tweet, I want to talk about it. So, but at least people are talking about it. And that's great for the game.
It's amazing for the game.
I think the partisanship that you mentioned is fantastic. It's like, I think there's a spectrum of partisanship. I think you have women's cricket on one side, and then you have like the transition into whatever, like men's cricket, all of that. And then on the far extreme right, you have CSK fans. And then RCB fans are on the far extreme left. RCB fans are apologetic just to even be RCB fans. And
Why do you have to remind me of my existence? Can I just enjoy wins in peace? Right? For the first time, I'm genuinely enjoying wins in peace, and then you invoke the
wins are what wins? RCB wins?
Other
but I want to also say, since we talked about Nasser, right? Nasser Hussain, I was really disappointed with Nasser Hussain. It's one of those things where Nasser he's an incredibly fair commentator, except when it comes to England. It's almost, I get this feeling when I listen to Nasser Hussain. This happened during the World Cup also in New Zealand, the Women's World Cup, which concluded. And then they had, Nas and Ian Smith had this nice banter going on through the World Cup and all of that. But for some reason, it's almost like Nasser Hussain tries to, in human form, disprove the Tebet test, where he's like, I'm of Asian descent, but, I am more English than the English are. And he kind of overcompensates for it. And even yesterday, it was like, he was on air and he was talking about these things. I was like, Nas, no, this is not the right thing. Like, I was incredibly disappointed. Everybody else on TV had that same opinion as well.
In fact, I thought Nas at least, he seemed to blurt it out in the moment, right? He said, oh, this is not how the game should end. This isn't right. But he later at least came back and said, it is within the laws, it is fine, and it is out. But the rest of the panel, Lydia Greenway, Dominic Cork, Nick Knight, and everyone else on Twitter. Unfortunately, the streak has ended. El Chopernos could not join us on the podcast this week. He's probably dealing with his newfound celebrity status because he has taken down Stuart Broad on Twitter. So I'm going to read out the tweets here. This is after the ICC had tweeted out the result of the game. So Stuart Broad's tweet, a run out, terrible way to finish the game. And El Chopernos replies, a celeb appeal, terrible way to get a wicket. Stuart Broad replies, what are you on about? El Chopernos replies, wait, what were you on about here, Stuart? And he's posted the clip of Stuart Broad nicking Ashton Agar to the slips and not walking. To which Stuart Broad replies again, he's clearly incensed now, right? I'd say 99% of the players I've played with have nicked the ball and not walked. I'd say 1% of players I've played with would use the Mankad as a mode of dismissal. All the best. And here's Chopper knows. There are folks more learned than you and me in much wider fields who tell you that one isn't wrong or terrible just because one is in the minority. Good luck. And with that, our podcast has gone to the next level. We now have panelists who are having conversations on Twitter with Stuart Broad. I think we've peaked. Yeah.
I think Chops has become a broad spectrum antibiotic at this point. So, yeah.
Indeed.
I just, English hypocrisy has always been one of the hardest things to stomach in this world. The royal family, monarchy, colonialism, all of these things, which we've seen in the, past 2 or 3 weeks because of events that have happened. But English hypocrisy about cricket, as Mike Marquisee put it so beautifully in his book, Anyone But England, English hypocrisy about cricket is probably the hardest hypocrisy to stomach. It's just unbelievable. And I think there's evidence of this because now obviously the Bharat Army on Twitter is on overdrive. They've been producing all these instances of, video instances where English cricketers have not really stuck to either the spirit of the SOC, the spirit of the of cricket, or even the laws of the game, in fact, right? So Stuart Broad not walking to something that would generously be described as taking a slice of his bat off, right, from off of Ashton Agar. I think Ryan Sidebottom was it who collided into the runner, and then they still run out the guy, and then there's a whole bunch of other instances.
Amy Jones as well. I don't know if you saw that.
Right. So English
Let's not
hypocrisy
forget Ben
always the
Stokes.
hardest.
Let's not forget Ben Stokes. At the
Ben
World
Stokes,
Cup,
which is,
touch.
whoops, I don't know what happened. That just magically went for 4, right?
And there is no way I can tell the umpire, you know what, don't give us those 4 runs. It's not like
speaking
I
of
cannot
that,
undo it.
you cannot do that, Ben Stokes. You cannot do that.
Ben Stokes, the last ball bender.
Oh.
Anyway, English hypocrisy, the hardest to stomach.
The best part about English hypocrisy, I think the best example on Twitter I saw was someone from Pakistan. I think this was a Pakistan fan club or someone. They pulled out records of how the head of MCC or some association is now Mike Gatting, who in 1993 took a team to apartheid South Africa as a rebel series, and take a wild guess who was in as a part of that rebel team from England. This was Chris Broad, who was on the tour, a little Broad who's on his daddy's lap, and Chris Broad is giving some commentary to the team, and there's like that's the best form. That was the best form.
No, don't forget that Mike Gatting is the guy who went and wagged a finger in Shakur Rana's face. So I mean, these guys are not exactly the best behaved people out there. Yeah. But anyway,
yeah. So that tweet was go on, sorry.
But as a result of all of this, the happiness that I'm feeling is the amount of people who got R. Ashwin back into consciousness. And R. Ashwin doing this to Josh Butler is like a sweet, sweet irony. So I think Deepti Sharma just earned herself a honorary Palayam Patti Kings jersey today, as a result of this.
Yeah, Ashwin in fact started trending on Twitter, and he himself came and tweeted, "Hey, why are you all trending me today?" which by the way elevates Ashwin to Tala Ajit level, because the fan club's getting you to trend out of the blue when you've done nothing on note. Yeah.
I think what Ashana did to Josh Butler is basically the Mahatma Gandhi being thrown out of the train in Peter Maritzburg, the equivalent of that. It's like we'll always keep going back to that for origin story.
Yeah. And the best part is, don't tell Ashwin's been doing nothing. Okay, he's been like patiently telling Ponniyin Selvan stories. It's been fun. He's doing social scripts on Twitter. If he was planning for the right reasons, it would have been good.
Yeah. So that podcast that Samir mentioned is the Pakistan Cricket Podcast, who put out that tweet with the Mike Gatting clip. We will link that in the show notes. But there were some other interesting takes as well, right? We've spoken about the gender disparity in cricket, the laws that are written, the laws that are unwritten. We've spoken about these dichotomies. There were a couple of very interesting takes as well, right? So, and Andrew Fidel Fernando from Click Info tweeted this. Just a reminder that when what spirit of cricket was decided, brown and black people were not really at the table. People very pressed about this, but you can't expect people who grew up in different cricket cultures to attach the same moral weight to a legal act. What do you guys think about this? I thought it was quite interesting.
I will tell you what I think about this by giving you an analogy. When I was a little kid, I used to read Enid Blyton books. I don't know if you guys have read Enid Blyton while growing up. It's a part of, childhood in India, growing up with lending libraries and stuff. And they used to have all these like amazing sounding foods, right? Because that was the whole point of reading Enid Blyton.
Meringues and scones.
Yeah. Potted sandwiches and tongue and God knows all kinds of rubbish, right? And I used to always want to eat it. Except then I grew up and then I realized what those things were. And I was like, what? Like, I don't want to eat this, right? This is the way I feel about Spirit of Cricket. So I'm actually agreeing with Andrew Fidel Fernando. I'm like, what rubbish is this? Like, this does not resonate at all with the way I grew up, the way I played cricket, the way I played. Why should a bunch of guys in powdered wigs who sat around in the 18th century and by the way oppressed half the world while they were doing it, why should what they thought 200 years back still inform the way we are watching this game we love to play and we love to watch? So anyway, that's my Enid Blyton theory of it.
I think Spirit of Cricket is only relevant if you have to invoke Teen Guna Lagan. Otherwise, it's just this shit. Trust me, right? Like what is Spirit of Cricket? Spirit of Cricket clearly doesn't define you magically touching your bat with the ball and going for a boundary, right? And then doing like a boundary count in like a crucial game, right? Like you don't have count backs. Okay, now those are rules that you have to address. And what is willful? Spirit of Cricket definitely is not sandpaper. You carrying sandpaper and then putting it in your crotch and then saying, oh, but we did this in the spirit of cricket, whatever it is, right? SOC makes sense. System on chip. That's what still it is.
When I think of Spirit of Cricket, I'm just reminded of my mother's WhatsApp to me yesterday. I'm pretty sure if I had a conversation with her about Spirit of Cricket, she'd be like, what Spirit of Cricket? And her message basically is like, very good end to the game. Deepti Sharma's awareness, we deserve to win. It was a rule.
Yeah.
That's how she thought about it. Spirit of Cricket goes out of the window when you're just following what's written in the rule book. I was like, yes, that's it. I don't even have to think about what Spirit of Cricket, which country I'm living in, what's my citizenship. I am a British citizen, by the way. I should mention that.
Ooh.
Alas, I'm sorry.
Alas.
I think Lord Tebbit is rolling around in a grave somewhere. I think he's dead. I hope he's dead. But anyway,
Ex-podcast panelist Sidin Vadukut also tweeted, cricket is weird. Some random mathematical formula that two people understand can decide who will win a match, but an actual written rule is debated ad nauseum. That's exactly what it is.
I just want to end by saying, literally, I think the way the English perceive the Spirit of Cricket thing is, and I'm going to slip into Tamil a little bit here, right? And I'll translate after that. For the English, the Spirit of Cricket is Enakku vanda rattam, unakku vanda takkali chutney, which literally translates to, if it happens to me, it's blood. If it happens to you, it's tomato chutney, which is literally what the English use Spirit of Cricket for. So,
no, this is perfect. If it happens to me, it is blood. If it happens to you, it is takkali chutney, also known as sauce, SOC, Spirit of Cricket.
oh no.
Put Vijay Sethupathe's voice at this point from Vikram Veda. He says this at the interval block. Perfect.
Could the law be worded a bit different? I think the NCC has done a good job moving it out of unfair play. But, it says if the non-striker is out of his or her ground at any time from the moment the ball comes into play, until the instant when the bowler would normally have been expected to release the ball, the non-striker is liable to be run out. What is this expectation? Like, the entire law is based on fields, right? Like, how would you normally expect the bowler to release the ball at a certain point in time? Like, who knows when the bowler is going to release the ball? Why can't you just say, as long as the ball is in the bowler's hand? Wouldn't that just remove all ambiguity from this? And be a very clear directive to non-strikers to just stay in the crease until the ball is in the air.
I suppose. Yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And
in fact, I think I should point out that on cricket Twitter, Peter Della Pina, who used to be at one point Cricket First correspondent in North America, I think he still covers a lot of associate cricket for them. He's been one of the very vocal proponents of this non-striker run out. His point being, and I think a lot of his point is also informed by baseball, right? And the sort of base stealing and all of that stuff. His point is, why would you give the non-striker an advantage? Why would you give the batting team an advantage, right? It's an unfair advantage if the non-striker takes off early. And baseball has this, right? Baseball has figured it out. Baseball basically says the pitcher can throw at any point and you're out if you're, short of your base, if you're trying to steal, go to the next base. And so, yeah, absolutely. Cricket should just clarify it along those lines, right? Like Peters had pretty much the most clear-sighted vision of this. And absolutely, Nitin, I think your point is very valid that, as long as the ball is in the bowler's hand, they control it. You don't get to take off. You don't get to, take the run for advantage. If you want to do it, take your chances, right? It's just the same as a stumping or a run out on the other end, right? Take your chances and live with it, or die by it.
Typically English to have written the law in such an ambiguous way, right? Because now people are invoking screenshots. Oh, she was expected to have delivered the ball by now. And there are people then defending Deepti because her arm has actually not gone up. Her bowling arm is still well down. So on what basis are you expecting that she might release the ball when her arm is still down? All needless ambiguity.
I think it's time we just level the game as well. It's heavily loaded in favor of batters. It's been in the last decade, and let's just accept it and just try to make things that level it. The overrate rule also does no good to the bowling side anyways. Another cricket truism that came true yesterday was that low scoring games produce thrillers, right? Like
absolutely.
And who would have thought about it, right?
Did you know that a ball is live the moment a bowler begins their run-up, and that a bowler in the middle of their run-up could actually stop and hurl the ball at the stumps at the striker's end to run out a striker in case the striker is wandering outside their crease. Now, this was allowed by the laws. As of now, it is still allowed, and the ICC has mooted that this gets changed. This is one of the changes they're making, along with moving the run out at the non-striker's end into run out section. So yeah,
somewhere Inzamam is thanking his stars that he didn't get a run out this way also.
So Inzamam would have jumped to avoid the ball, and which actually happened. But yeah,
Inshallah, I played well.
Since we are talking about ICC and laws, we should also talk about the new ban that has been imposed on saliva and the use of saliva in shining a ball. So, as we know, during the COVID times, the use of saliva to shine a ball was disallowed because, for obvious reasons. We now have stats that say that the amount of swing that a ball was getting has not really changed, during the COVID pandemic period when saliva was not being used. And this has prompted the ICC to say, okay, no more spitting on the ball. What I find most surprising, guys, is actually two things. One, we've had everyone in cricket religiously spitting on a ball for the last many years. And secondly, people were okay with this, right? People were okay with playing with a ball that had been spat upon by 10 other people. And nobody stopped to say, okay, is this actually helping the bowlers do anything at all? Hilarity all around.
So that's interesting. I actually thought, I didn't know that the rule was new. Like I thought they were just going to continue with the rule during the COVID thing. They were going to persist the rule. But I guess now this is like an extension for the rule, like even post-COVID. Is that what you're saying? Like
yeah, I think if there is one good thing that has come out of the COVID pandemic across all spheres in the world, this is probably that one thing that I could point out. Yeah.
I have to say, I'm not actually surprised. This is very in brand with cricket, just running on vibes. Like,
yes.
The whole saliva helps the ball swing is like peak vibes. It's just like, yeah, do it. Just because people have been doing it for hundreds of years, let's just do it. And then, see what comes out of it.
From spirit of cricket to spit of cricket.
Saliva on the ball seems eerily similar to wear a violet or a purple color shirt if you're in Web3 or crypto. It's the same energy. Yeah.
Wasn't there also a proposal to basically legalize, or they were talking about, should we just legalize ball tampering anyway, right? Whatever we define as ball tampering now, right? Should we allow the bowling side to deal with the condition of the ball any which way they see fit? I don't know, maybe they should do an ablation study of that also. Like, does sandpaper really help? Do lozenges really help? Do cough drops help? Like, I think
bowlers should be allowed to do whatever they want to a ball until the ball reaches a stage where it cannot be defined as a ball in playing condition anymore, right? Like, I think that's where the umpire should step in and say, okay, now it's time to get this ball changed. But otherwise, be my guest, do what you have to, get whatever advantage you have to out of it.
I propose addition of sunscreens to that because a lot of players have a lot of sunscreen on their face. So yeah,
why not? Sunscreen, sunsilk, put whatever you want on the ball.
Sauce, put sauce on the ball. Takkali chutney.
Rachna, I actually have a question for you. So, as arguably the biggest fan / proponent of women's cricket that I personally know, at least, right? What do you feel about yesterday's ending? In the sense that, I was thinking about it myself, right? And I was like, on the one hand, it did get a lot more attention to the end of the series and to the whole, there was a series going on, all of that. But at the same time, it's also frustrating because, this series was supposed to be about, it's a 3-0 sweep, after a really long time, an Indian team winning in England. It was supposed to be Jhulan Goswami's swan song, farewell to her and all of that stuff. So do you have thoughts on that? Like, are you infuriated by the fact that the Deepti Sharma thing seems to have overshadowed all of that? Do you, are you in the camp of any publicity is good publicity and more eyes on the women's game? What are your thoughts on that?
I really wonder how much publicity that Jhulan would have gotten. I mean, if the match hadn't ended the way it did. Just compare it to Mithali Raj's farewell. There was hardly any conversation at the time, and yes, she released a very beautiful message. Modi also tweeted about it, but it kind of went hidden. The movie as well, not many people ended up watching, and it's not a terrible movie. It's a decent movie, as some of you, I'm sure.
Mostly because you didn't ship them Old Monk to watch it with. But,
So I am in the camp that any publicity is good publicity, especially if there are no questions. There are certainly questions, but according to the rule book, there are clearly no questions around the ethics or the laws of the game. Deepti didn't do anything wrong. She followed a rule, and this is something that we have seen in the past as well, done by other cricketers. Jhulan had a great ending. I think her last match is memorable for many, many reasons. Mithali's last match is also memorable. The one before the semis in the World Cup against South Africa. But yes, they had a different flavor altogether.
Right.
No, I actually think it was the perfect storm. It could not have happened at a better time. It got Jhulan the attention that she deserves. It gives women's cricket the attention it deserves. It gives this Indian team's incredible win the attention that it deserves, which otherwise I don't think it would have got, right? Because you've got, like Rachna mentioned, it's men on Twitter who are up in arms, right? They've all, I'm sure, noticed the result. It puts the BCCI also in the spotlight, I would say, right? Going into that AGM, they better now ratify that women's IPL. Like, what better time than now? I mean, they can't really delay this anymore, right? Everyone is talking about women's cricket. And I would also say it's a great time for the spirit of cricket enthusiasts also to be put in their place to see this happen, because everyone will now go and see this law is not in the unfair practices or, unfair dismissals area that it used to be. And I would actually say people like Deepti, Ashwin, and we need more volunteers here to just come and keep doing this again and again and again in international cricket until, and at all levels of cricket, until this becomes normalized. And non-strikers realize that, okay, there's no sympathy over here, that we just need to follow the rules, and we'll be not out if we do that.
I'll also mention, a 3-0 clean sweep again was a great ending for Jhulan. I mean, the last time India won a series in England was in 1999. So that as well is something that I think Jhulan's going to take back. And I remember reading one tweet that where someone tweeted, "It's coming home," and then was like, "Wait, this is not a World Cup. This is not the Commonwealth Game Finals. Then why does it feel that way?" And that's again where women's cricket has gone to, where what the feeling, the sentiment of being a India women's cricket supporter in India. It felt like a very, very big win yesterday for many, many reasons. The series when that is, yeah.
This is honestly, make no mistake, this is the desert storm moment of women's cricket, if there were any. I mean, look at what all has transpired in this series. Harmanpreet Kaur got a 143. Meghna Singh Thakur's just been blazing away, right? Like, so Renuka Singh Thakur. Sorry. There are players who are up and coming, right? Like for example, during the T20s, I was super excited to watch Kiran Navgire because I had seen her in the Challengers T20 that happens in the finals week of the IPL, and she had blitzed her way across. Unfortunately, did not get the start in her first game. I think she was 4 on 5 or something when she was dismissed. But she's another prospect that's super exciting for me. And of course, Shafali Verma, who's just there. I mean, she's had an off day yesterday, but you can always expect her to blast. But This is the Desert Storm equivalent. I mean, put together the 140, 143, put together bowling performances, put together whatever transpired in this entire England tour, so to speak, with the one-off test also in context. This is it. I think it's only upwards from here. This team, frankly, reminds me of the 90s men's cricket team, and this is the Desert Storm that's come through. So, yeah.
Well, if you look at, they came very, very close to winning a World Cup in 2017, right? And they again came very close to winning in Australia in, what was it, 2020, just before the pandemic.
2020.
And then the Commonwealth Games. So they've been close to the best team in the world now multiple times in the past. And each of those, in fact, I know it's not good to keep invoking men's cricket, but each of those would have been the 1983 moment for women's cricket. And I like the analogy of the Desert Storm, because this was not a World Cup, but it is a moment that is going to get a lot of attention.
I'm going to say you don't even have to invoke men's cricket for this. You know what's a better parallel for this is what PV Sindhu has managed to do in the Olympics with badminton, right? Like, she's come so close, but she's not yet got that gold medal, right? But all the times that she's actually fallen, there's been a spike, like a skyrocketing spike in the interest in badminton, right? I mean, not that there isn't an interest anyway, like there's just because of what Gopi Chand has done and all the players, especially out of Hyderabad and all of that, there is enough interest in badminton, right? But every time Sindhu, basically in the past 2 Olympics, right, that her performance has basically brought a ton of people along. And I think this is like that. Like, I think these kinds of opportunities. And honestly, like, since we've been talking about it, the BCCI at this point has no legs to stand on, right? Because the IPL, the men's IPL, we know is super popular, right? But forget about that. Any random league that you make, like this Legends and Maharajas, like this Legends League of Cricket thing that's been going on as well, random players past their prime. I mean, they're not random, fine, Harbhajan and, all these guys were really legends, right? But people pack stadiums in like Kanpur and, all these other venues.
Raipur.
There is no reason for the BCCI not to hold a women's IPL at this point, whether commercial, whether logistical, they have no legs to stand on. So
one of the things I vividly remember of Jhulan Goswami is from the 2010 World T20. Okay, and this was where the men's and the women's World T20s were being held simultaneously in the West Indies. Obviously, India were expected to do very well, the men's team, and they did not. Right, they lost all their Super Sixes games, I think, and were knocked out. And the women's team was getting no attention. Right, Jhulan was the captain. They were getting absolutely no attention until the men's team got knocked out. And then suddenly all the reporters were going and, interviewing Jhulan, saying, okay, can you at least bring back home, hold our pride and bring the cup back home and all of that. Women's cricket was not just literally, it was even figuratively an afterthought. And Jhulan has actually lived through that era, right? She's someone who started in the early 2000s, and now 20 years plus later, we've reached a stage where we're talking about women's cricket without having to invoke the men's game. And they can set Twitter ablaze as well, right? With what's happening. So yes, it is fantastic to see that evolution. I'm sure Jhulan will be proud of it as well, to have been a part of that evolution.
I am super excited to see Chakda Express after this. I don't care. It's going to release straight on Netflix. So
Rachna is closing.
Go for this one.
We have to describe to our listeners. Rachna is closing her eyes and wincing in pain and trying to imagine another bottle of Old Monk. But
we'll do a Zoom view or something this time. I'll also get my bottle of Old Monk or something. I remember. So there is this distinct moment when Jhulan Goswami announced her retirement. I think Anushka Sharma posted a photo of her jersey with just the number and the name taped and saying that. Waxing eloquent, I don't remember the test, but she said that the Chakda Express chugs on. I mean, 6 months ago, I don't remember this moment, but after yesterday, after seeing the Guard of Honor that she got, and in context of whatever she's done for the women's cricket, I'm just super excited to just see this woman's story on the screen. I think that will also pique a lot of people's interest. There have also been women's sports movies that are not executed well, but I'm just hoping against hope that Chakda Express basically does to women's cricket, the Chakda India moment. So there's a pun there also.
What do Ash Anna and Deepti Sharma celebrate, the dismissals with once they're done with it?
Old Mankad.
Old Mankad, yes.
Nice. Yeah.
Old man Mankad, yes.
Nitin, you spoke about the transition and what Jhulan has seen, and how in 2010 she was women's cricket was looked at as an afterthought. As a tribute to Jhulan, I'm reminded of this one incident from I think 2005 2007 when they were touring England, and Mithali was captain at the time. And apparently Jhulan had taken a few wickets, and Mithali, and they didn't really get press coverage. But Mithali goes to the other hotel room and she calls Jhulan, and she puts on a British accent and she says that she's from the BBC, and she wants to interview Jhulan Goswami. And then Mithali calls the entire team, and for half an hour she's interviewing Jhulan Goswami.
Oh.
And Jhulan,
Amazing.
after Jhulan cuts the call, and then she calls all the girls, and she's like, "Oh, guess what? I just had an interview by BBC. It's gonna come out in the next couple of days. I'm going to call my parents right now to let them know." And Mithali at that point was like, "Oh, I think it's gone a bit too far," and then let her know. And then they didn't speak for a few days. But yeah, imagine this is in the 2000s. International players representing the country, and today people are revering her. It's incredible to know about the transition, even though I didn't see it at the time.
Amazing. Is this clip available somewhere online? Is there a clip?
Actually, there's a podcast in which she talks about it. Let me try to pull it up. It was a very random podcast, but I'll try to find it.
Amazing. This should be called the BBC Bakra.
Not Shabash Bittu.
As an afterthought, we should also talk about men's cricket. So India and Australia are playing a T20 series, which is currently tied at 1-1 after India won an 8-over shootout in the second T20. The third game is to be played today. India's bowling seems to have really become a problem area now. During the Asia Cup, we said Harshal Patel would come and solve all the problems facing the Indian men's team ahead of the World Cup, but he's going for runs aplenty.
I think Kop Di Mein Tel is the only hope at this point. If that does not work out, do not be surprised if India is crashing out before it even makes whatever the Super Sixes or the semi-finals. I have at this point zero hope on this team because this team can bat their skins out. There will be one day when a Hardik puts his hand up. There will be another day when a DK or a Virat or a Rohit Sharma will put their hand up. And of course, KL will anchor himself across all these games. But the bowling is really a matter of concern. Even before that toe-crushing Yorker, Bumrah was really wavered. He was taken apart by Finchie, who has like a wooden log for his front pad. And yet, Bumrah was not able to nail the lines. It's just crazy, man. I mean, you have so many people. You have literally like leagues that you run, you have divisions that you run, and yet you can't find someone who just nails Yorkers one after another. Like your experiments with starting from Natarajan to Arshdeep to now Umran Malik, who you grooming as a speedster, but his Yorkers are maybe who knows. So who's your next Yorker? I mean, I don't see anyone aside from Bumrah. So yeah, there is that. It's a huge concern. I mean, this is aside of whatever's going to happen in today's game. Their death bowling is not up to the mark.
I think the problem here is that Yorker rhymes with Ajit Agarkar. That is the problem.
What?
Yeah.
Kar har Maidan Fateh. Yorker har Maidan Fateh.
See, at least the Yorker is a tough one to deliver consistently, right? My concern with the way the Indian team is going into this World Cup is there are a few things that work in T20 cricket. We know for sure that a fast bowler who goes hard lengths, for instance, has been successful across the world and across leagues, right? Fast wrist spin tends to keep batsmen quiet, especially right-handers. And we've seen that. You can see that when India is batting with Kohli and Rohit Sharma continue to struggle every time they are facing anyone who turns the ball away, right? Having a mix of left and right-handers helps because it scrambles bowling attacks and, their plans. Somehow the Indian team is landed up in this place where they don't have any of this, right? They don't have hard length bowlers. They don't have a wrist spinner. They don't have a decent left-arm spinner. Yes, Akshar Patel is a fairly smart operator and he's able to bowl those lengths and very consistently and get some purchase out, but he's not your quintessential left-arm spinner, right? And you have a lineup full of right-handers, right? Rishabh Pant is now back in the squad, back in the 11, but he didn't get to bat in the second game. Maybe he will today. It's a very one-dimensional team, right? Like you did mention, they'll probably score runs on most days, but there will be one day against a decent team which will come with plans for a lineup that is very constrained and doesn't have dimensionality to deal with all these different variables.
I'm just desperately consulting weather charts for Australia like 2 weeks from now. That's our only hope, I think, at this World Cup. It's like every match has to be curtailed to 7 overs apiece or whatever.
Oh, but no, I disagree actually. I think the Indian team is worst equipped to win in rain-shortened games. They played well in that second T20, but a team that goes a game that goes down to 8 overs requires you to actually have more variables to play with, right, and not be more constrained. And I actually think India will struggle more often than not if it's a rain-shortened game.
Very interestingly, I have a few family members in Cuttack, very cut off from internet, unironically and all of that. So a couple of months back when the India-Sri Lanka T20 was happening out there, they reached out and said that, "Bhaiya, we want a couple of tickets. Can you just book for us on Insider and all of that?" So I booked those tickets. They got it in a decent stand and all of that. I sent it. I got an email after the ticket was booked. One was the ticket, of course. The other one was like this whole 53 pointer point document with a PDF attached from Paytm Insider saying, this is the do's, this is the don'ts. I think the do's were only around like 8 to 10. The don'ts were around 50 plus, which is don't carry a lighter, don't carry keychains, don't carry power banks.
So this was spirit of cricket rules, basically.
At least somebody is writing them down.
At least somebody is writing them down. Seeing that, I'm increasingly starting to believe that as each day passes by in India, watching a game of cricket is increasingly becoming like going to an SL World or Wonderland, doing one of those crazy rides. A couple of days ago, we even saw that tweet thread where in Gwalior in 2007 in a game, they basically let all the crowds in and locked the gates out. So at one point, the press box actually started smelling of piss. So yeah, I mean, thoughts on this, guys? Why is it that the richest cricket board cannot ensure that people don't have like good stadium facilities? What are we missing?
Before we even go into that, I was saying the richest cricket board cannot even afford to get covers that cover the entire ground. Right. Let's forget. Spectator experience or ticketing, etc. It's absolute shambles. Yeah.
For BCCI, cover up means something else. It's not the ground. No, but Samir, I was gonna seriously answer your question by saying one. Because, why does the richest cricket board blah blah blah, why are they unable to do this? Because one, the spectator in the stadium matters zero to them. He or she does not matter to them, right? All that matters to them is you and me sitting in front of the TV, right? Or sitting in front of our smartphone now increasingly, right? And tuning into these things and the ad revenue that comes with it. And this has been a pattern, right? Since the 90s, like we talked about, earlier in the podcast, we talked about Desert Storm and all of that. And that, those kinds of things kind of started it off, right? Like the 90s ODI craze basically set off this whole revolution. That's one. And the second thing is, unfortunately, no matter what, like you give the bare minimum or even less than the bare minimum, people will still come to the stands in India. People will still come to see international cricket in India. People will still crowd everything, right? And this has been like this, the sham that is, spectator experience for cricket in India has been like that pretty much forever, right? As far as we can tell. Like, Mike Marquesi writes about this in his book about the 96 World Cup, war minus the shooting. He talks about the experience in Delhi. I doubt it's improved in the Firozshah Kotla, 25 years later or more than 25 years later, right?
The stadium, if anything, looks uglier than it used to back then.
Right,
with the parking lot.
The Arun Jaitley Stadium now.
Right, yeah. The name is the only thing that has changed. But
thankfully, I'm sure Mr. Ferrozshah Kotla doesn't want his name to be associated with that abomination of a stadium.
But anyway, so it's... I think those are really the two main reasons. When you stop seeing the person who's showing up at the stadium as a consumer that you should pander to and that you should, make the experience for them, and you start seeing them more as a burden, like you're like, okay, I'm doing you a favor by even letting you have a ticket to come into this thing. It's that lack of, it's that misalignment in intent, I think.
2010 to 2015 was when Bangalore as a stadium saw a lot of effort put in on the spectator experience, right? Like right from the A stand to the N and hospitality. I even remember once going into the hospitality where they served us Puran Poli or Obatu when in the first game of the season. This was RCB versus DD. I remember we just ate Puran Poli. I think the draw then towards the end of that season became, can we get hospitality tickets and go eat food rather than go and watch the game, right?
So it became another Bangalore food walk instead of an
it
IPL.
became a Bangalore food walk at the and the curious fact was Sadaran Maya was the treasurer at that time. He ran a chain of these Maya restaurants, right? So it had to become like a food walk at that time. But I saw a lot of focus being put into those sections, right? Like water would be available. It wouldn't be like that bad or, as bad as how it is, right? Like there's no facilities. People are just getting lathi charged and hit upon to get tickets. No availability of tickets. Everything just goes sold out.
I know we keep saying Bangalore has the best stadium experience in the country, which probably is true. I would agree to it. But just a couple of anecdotes from Bangalore, KSCA visits in the recent past. So there was this India-South Africa T20 that happened there a few months back. It was rained out, right? Only 3 hours of cricket happened. So I had gone for that game with wife and son, and we had gone to the North Stand, which is actually one of the pricier stands over there with a very good view. And this was one of those stands where even food was being served and all of that, right? We wanted to use the washroom, right? Guess how many washrooms were there in the North Stand for the entire North Stand to use? There were 2 washrooms, and they did not have urinals, right? These were like rooms that you have to go into and bolt the door behind you and use it. So one person can use it at a time for the entire stand. And both of these happen to be men's toilets. So there was no dedicated women's toilet for the North Stand in the Chinnaswamy Stadium. So, and this, I must say, it is still the best experience out there. Right? Also, by the way, there was a glass window for this brilliant toilet that was out there, which was facing a very crowded part of the stadium where people were walking. So, thankfully, a very stained window, feature, not a bug, so to speak. The window was thankfully stained, so you could still use it. But yeah, this is where it is at, right? The BCCI doesn't care about the crowds, but if they were to think for a moment, right, they would understand that cricket in India looks good because people actually throng the stadiums, right? We had a couple of IPLs, or one IPL that was held behind closed doors in the UAE, right, during the COVID pandemic. It did not look or feel the same as all the other IPLs because you have grounds that are filling up with people. It is true that India is a country of 1 billion people and there aren't too many fun things to do, right? This is one of the reasons why people go and watch Bollywood movies week in and week out, despite them being pretty bad. And it's the same with cricket, right? A cricket game comes to your city once a year, maybe twice a year if you're not an IPL center, sometimes not even that frequently. There are enough and more people who would give an arm and a leg literally to go and be a part of that experience. So you could create a bad experience for 30,000 people and there would be another 300,000 people the next time a game comes around. At some stage, the BCCI needs to realize this is the golden goose. Just divert some of the money that you're making back into the game, no? Like, why can't you have a cover? Like, in Nagpur, you could not play a game until so late and you had to reduce a 20-over game to an 8-over match on a day when it did not rain. The rain was all the previous day, right? Like, you can't cover your grounds properly. Like, what are you doing, BCCI? It's ridiculous.
All of the BCCI super sops are for the office bearers alone.
Not for the super stoppers.
Yeah, the metaphor about them using a hair dryer to clean the pitch was something. Yeah, they were taken so many haircuts probably that they need to use a hair dryer now.
And Rachna, I'm sure at Lords the experience was far nicer. I've been to Lords a couple of times. Walking into that stadium is a joy in itself, right?
Yes, it is a joy. Also, on the BCCI channeling their revenues, I would also mention, please give some more money to the Indian women. The salaries have been stagnant for at least 3 years now. People like Pooja Vastrakar, etc., making 10 lakhs a year. Jhulan Goswami, 30 lakhs a year. So that if you sum up, all of the retainers, we still make far less than, Rohit Sharma, Kohli. The highest woman is paid 50L and the lowest men in tiers is 1 crore. I think that's gone up actually for the men, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's there are lots of ways in which BCCI's money can be diverted. But yeah, Lords is an incredible experience. I think every ground in London in the UK that I've been to has just been it's been great. Also, if you think about cricket in India, in the UK, the parallel in a way is football. And I actually live right next to the Arsenal stadium, and it does get quite manic around here. So it's also a function of the sport and the interest. I would say it's not and UK is 70 million versus India's 1.x billion. So yeah.
Interesting trivia about the Lord's Cricket Stadium. It is the only it is the only cricket ground in the world, by the way, where you can bring alcohol from outside. This is actually true. It's on their it's on their website, and it's true. I've tested it when I was there. But yeah, it's very special. Yeah.
Thus basically proving the adage that Lords really has the spirit of cricket.
I think that's as good a moment as ever to call time on this episode of Bits and Pieces. We spoke about Takali Chutney, about Spirit of Cricket, about SOC, RAM. We also spoke about Jhulan Goswami. We spoke about soaked press boxes in India. So we've covered the gamut of...
You mean we have covered the Gaumutra. But please, let me not stop you.
Yeah, a request to the BCCI, the ICC, and the Spirit of Cricket practitioners to please stop pissing on our coffee. On that note, we will call time on episode 38 of Bits and Pieces. Thanks a lot for joining us, and say bye, Kart, Rachna, and Samir.
Hey, bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Until then, we remain bits and pieces.
Ooh, okay.